the workflow of any structural modeling software is the same. So what do you do in the first stage? We first study the plan that is being developed by an architect. Okay, an architect develops a plan first. Let it be any construction project. It can be commercial or it can be residential. It is the architect who starts the project in the first place. So what does he do? He first develops a plan, and that plan gets approved by the government, whichever government. Once the plan is approved, then the plan goes to the structural engineer. Okay, so the structural engineer assess the plan first. He'll study the plan thoroughly, and he'll make sure what are the different scopes that are going to come into the building. When I say scopes, for what purpose that building is going to be used, what is the occupancy, exact occupancy of the different parts of the building, and he'll actually go through the plans, and he'll decide where the structural components needs to be placed. So we might be thinking that as a structural engineer, it is upon us for us to decide what kind of a structural component has to come, and we'll be thinking that we, as a structural engineer, we take responsibility in designing all that structure and all that, but it doesn't work that way. What happens is it is the architect who decides how the structure has to come out, how the structure has to look. So based on the design which the architect gives, it's our responsibility to bring out the supporting structural design for the proposed building. So that is the reason why in most of the companies, there will always be a clash between the architect and structure. Just like the way a structural engineer is experienced, definitely a project head or a senior architect would be equally experienced as structural engineers. So they both will sit in the initial meeting and they'll discuss what are the different scopes, whether things are feasible or not, and all that will be done. So once that is done, as a structural engineer, you have to first model the structure. So modeling the structure is the most primary thing you need to do. So once you have modeled the structure, I'm going by the workflow. So since we are just going to discuss one particular topic, that is interactive design, I'm going to skip all that basic initial parts of how to open StatPro and all that. I guess by now, if you're in MTech, you would have definitely come across Stat, and if you're final year or third year, you would have used Stat at least once in your life. So that's why I'm skipping all that part. So once I'll just narrate you through the workflow. And after that, I'll show you how interactive design is done and how that input is very much helpful for us in proceeding with the erection of the structure. Okay, so I'll just go and select the project. I'll initiate a project here in the first place using Stat. So this is what I get. So once the modeling of the structure is done, what else we do is you can just, if you are not familiarized with the workflow of StatPro, you can just follow the order given in the software's user interface. Here, this is the software. This is how it looks, StatPro. And you can see here, initially in the first, this is called as the process tab. In the process tab, the first thing you have is setup. So setup is the place where you give all the project details and everything, all that necessary data. And once that is done, you'll go ahead with the modeling process. So that is why I have clicked on geometry. So when I click on geometry, either you can create the model by user interface method. So this is geometrical user interface method where I use the mouse cursor plainly to draw my beams and columns and everything like this. So if I just close the grid, I'll have this like this, and I can just use all the tools that are fairly given here to develop a model. So I can develop whatever kind of model I want. If you're very familiar with different modeling tools here, so just click OK. So you'll develop a plan, a set of columns and beams like this. Now this set of columns and beams that we see on the screen is nothing but the set of columns and beams that are present in the room that you're sitting right now. Every 56 candidates present in this meeting. So just look around your room. There is 4 columns and 4 beams in that particular room, definitely. And you have a slab. Generally in StatPro, you'll be wondering that you'll be able to design slab, but it's not possible for you to design slab in StatPro. You have a separate tool called Stat etc. That is the place where you can design a slab. Okay, now I'm just going to not take a plan here. So I don't want to, if interactive design is new for you today, then I don't want to mess it up with bringing in a huge plan or something like that. So let's see. Let's imagine that this is the room you're sitting in right now. Okay, you must be sitting in a bedroom or a living room somewhere. Definitely that will have, if the room span is around 10 feet by 12 feet or 10 feet by 13 feet. So you'll definitely have a column and beam set like this. Okay, so I'm not going to bring in a complicated structure. If I want to bring in a complicated complicated structure, definitely I'll go to run structure wizard and I'll bring a plan. I'll bring a model from here. So I have a model called Bay Frame. So it will have at least 5 floors in it. So I'm not going to mess it up like that. So I'll just show how interactive design works using just this 4 columns and 4 beams here. So this is how I model it. So however complicated the plan is, you can easily bring it out as a model, but it depends on how easily you bring it based on how much time you spend for studying that particular plan. Okay, so if you're spending too much time for studying that plan, definitely you'll be able to easily model it. If you directly sit with the plan and start modeling it, you'll go and end up getting stuck somewhere. Okay, so now I've developed 4 beams and columns. So let's go as per the workflow here. So I'm done with the geometry. So then you have something called general here. So general is giving all the data. These data, which I'm going to give in this general tab, or the data, are some of the data that we find in a question paper. So till date, when you're working for your semester, when you're studying for your semester and you're solving question papers in your exams, some of the given data that will be there in your question paper, you will not be thinking where we get that data in the first place. For example, if you just randomly pick a question in DRC, the question will say that there is a beam of this cross section. Let's say I generally prefer working in feet and inches, so I'll just use that units. It will say that a beam of cross section of 1 feet by 1.5 feet is experiencing a load of let's say 3.5 kilonewton per meter, a UDL of 3.5 kilonewton per meter. So design the given beam. So this is how the question will be posed to you. So what is that you do in the first step? You just first calculate the self weight of the beam. You know the compressive strength of you know the density of concrete, and you know the dimension of the beam, length of the beam, cross section of the beam. You just use that and calculate the self weight of the beam and all that. So that is how you approach a question. But the biggest alarm here is, from where did you get that 3.5 kilonewton per meter? That is the biggest question. So unless and until you know the answer for that particular question, you can never become a proper design engineer, because when you go by the workflow, even of the software, the first thing you'll do is you'll give the property of the beams and columns. So let's say I'm going to give the dimensions of the beams and columns. So I'll define the dimension of the beams and columns. So my beams are like 0.3 by 0.3, which is nothing but 1 feet by 1 feet, 1 feet cross 1 feet. So I'll assign that to the beams here. Okay, so I've assigned it to the beams here. So I'll assign to selected beams and assign it. Done. So now for the columns, I'll be having, so 0.3, 0.45, let's say 1.5 feet by 1 feet. So I've given that. So I'll assign it to this columns here. So now I have R1 section and R2 section here. So whatever we are going to see is something you'll be solving for some 8 to 12 pages in your 16-mark question in your exam. So in our syllabus we have 16-mark question. So it's like a long answer type question. So you'll be solving for 8 to 12 pages. You'll be scratching your head, clicking your calci, and then you'll be deriving an answer. The one good thing in design paper is that you don't have a standard answer key for that. You can assume any kind of a reinforcement, and you can assume any grade of concrete when you're designing. So it doesn't have in Anna University, we don't have a proper answer key for that. So now I'm done with the cross sections. Next thing what I'll have to do is I'll have to give the supports in the right point. So we all know that it is always fixed support in the bottom of the column. So you have the footing in the column's base. So it's always fixed support over there. So I'll just select it. Even in YouTube also, if you go and search, you will not be able to find interactive design. So those who have already studied StatPro, maybe this topic is something that you have left out. So you can just note down whatever I'm teaching. So I have given the support in the base here. So this is where you get stuck. So till this topic, till this process, giving a property and giving the support, that's always given in the question paper. And you know how it is done. So you can just directly measure the cross section of a beam, and everybody knows that it's fixed support in the base of the column. So now the real question comes here when it comes to load definition. So this is where we tutors help you in just directly in the question paper itself. We'll be giving you the load that is acting on the beam. But as a student, you should be aware from where that load is being calculated. So by now, most of the studious people in this particular 52 numbers will be aware that there's a code book for load calculation called IS 875. So how do you know what are the different construction materials used for constructing a building? So that is why we have a paper called building materials, or you have it is called as building materials, or it is called as construction materials. You'll have that generally in your second semester or in your second year, either third semester or fourth semester. If you are thorough with that subject, let's say not only with the syllabus that is given in your college, if you just study the whole book completely, either a foreign author or an Indian author, you'll be aware of what are the different materials that are used in building practices. So you can see here in the index page itself, you have all the unit weight of all the construction materials here. You have the unit weight of all the construction materials. Okay. So if you just explore this code book, you will know what are the different unit weights. Now, we know in the room which you're sitting, okay, if you're sitting in the first floor, definitely your room has that 4 columns and beams, and definitely the beam, on top of the beam, you will have the wall. That is a basic thing. So if you want to calculate how much load that particular wall is exerting on that particular beam, so any person who is good in civil engineering will definitely know the kind of load that wall exerts on the beam. So the kind of load that particular brick wall or a concrete masonry wall, it can be, that wall can be made of anything. Okay, so it can be made of concrete blocks, or it can be made of bricks, anything it can be made of. But as a civil engineer, you should be knowing that if that wall is resting on that beam, it's definitely the nature of load applied on that particular beam because of that wall is nothing but UDL. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to see page number 6 here. So if you go to page number 6, wait a minute. If you just scroll down, the unit weight of bricks would be given here. So unit weight of brick is given here. So we know the length of the wall, height of the wall, and thickness of the wall. If it is a partition wall, it will be 4.5 inches, and if it is a exterior wall, it will be 1 feet or 0.75 inches. It's exactly 0.75 inches. Sorry, not 0.75 inches, 0.75 feet. Okay. So we know the proper dimensions of the wall. So based on that, you will multiply the unit weight, and then that load is being given as an UDL here. Okay, so that is how we compute the dead load. Okay, I'm just saying an example here for the wall alone. And so if all the 4 beams walls are resting on that beams, means you will have to give the UDL for all the 4 beams. So this is one way of calculating dead load. Next thing is, so we are not done with the load yet. So we have just calculated dead load alone. The dead load is something which is immovable. It is not the furnitures, or it is not the immovable things in the room, just like the way we are being taught. It is actually the these kind of walls that definitely needs to be considered when you are designing it. And then next thing what you have is we have live load. So live load, we'll be assuming that living objects are the live loads. Yeah, that is true. And at the same time, when you're designing a building that has not been constructed yet, okay, the first thing is that building has not been constructed yet, and as a design engineer, it is your responsibility to make sure if it is going to be constructed, it has to be safe. It shouldn't collapse for the load that is going to be exerted on the structure. So in that way, you cannot assume how many people are going to live in that particular building. So it's quite risky, because once the building is constructed, you will not be the one who knows how many people are going to rest in that particular building. So what we'll do is, generally, we'll go by code IS 875 part 2. So you have, it will be much interesting if you explore this IS 875 part 2. You will have a lot of classifications of buildings here. So they call live load as imposed load in this code book. So if you see here, to just go through the first 2-3 pages, they would have clearly explained what is an occupancy, principal occupancy, or what is an occupancy of a building. So as a design engineer, you should know the exact occupancy of the building for which you're designing. So occupancy of a building is nothing but for which purpose that building or part of a building is intended to be used. That is what we call it as occupancy building, occupancy of the building. So based on different occupancies, the buildings are classified as assembly buildings. So now somebody comes and approaches you, says that they want to construct a church prayer hall. Okay, let's say for church prayer hall of a capacity of 10,000 people. So now then in that case, definitely it will fall under assembly buildings. So you have to go and search in assembly buildings. So marriage halls, town halls, auditorium, exhibition halls, all these fall under assembly buildings. If somebody is coming and asking you to construct a bank or an office, then you should go and search for live loads in business buildings category. So you have office buildings after that. So there are lots and lots of categories of buildings based on their occupancy. Now, if you're constructing a part of a college, then it will come as an institutional building, mercantile building, residential buildings. There are so many things here. So how do they calculate the live load based on these occupancies? If you just scroll down, you can find it here. So now the first occupancy they have discussed here is residential building. So definitely in a residential building, we are clearly aware of what are the rooms that will be available in a residential building. So all the rooms and kitchens, for them, the live load will be 2 kilonewton per. You can see here, it is actually kilonewton per meter square. But if you see on the top, it will be given as UDL. So we clearly know that the unit of a UDL is kilonewton per meter. But whereas the way they have given here is, they have given it in terms of pressure or stress here, load by area. Okay, so it is a kilonewton per meter square. Now I'll show you how the transformation happens. So I'm referring this code book and I'm going to assign the live load based on that. So now we clearly know that we are seeing the room in which everybody is sitting right now. So we have 4 columns and 4 beams, and of course that must be any one room in that particular house you are living. So it can be a living room or it can be a bedroom. So here we have 2 kilonewtons given here. So let's take that 2 kilonewtons as live load now. Now let's go with dead load and live load here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define the load here. So I'm going to create 2 load cases. So one is the dead load and the other one is live load. So I'm just creating 2 load cases here. I'm not done anything else. So in that dead load, first thing I have to give a self weight. In this, we need not calculate manually like the way we used to do while solving the question, because software does that. So we have to assign the self weight first, because we already defined all the cross sections and everything. Next thing what I'll do is I'll go and give the UDL. So this particular UDL which I'm going to give now is nothing but the dead load caused by the wall resting on the beam. So now I'm giving it roughly as per your question paper. So it is like minus 3.5 kilonewton per meter. The reason why I'm giving minus is the load always acts in the downward direction, and the direction of the load, it's by default global y direction, which is nothing but downwards. So in order to indicate it's acting in the downward direction, I have to put up a negative sign here. So I'm not going to go deep into D1, D2, D3 and all that. It's for the precision of the exertion of load on the beam. So that is why we have this D1, D2, D3 value. Right now I'll give all the values as 0, which means that this 3.5 kilonewton per meter will act exactly on the principal axis of the beam, the central axis of the beam. So I'll just give add here. So I'm going to assign it to the beams alone. And we should be very much aware that this UDL is acting only on the beam. We know that from the beam it is going to get transferred to columns, but it doesn't, we need not assign it to the columns. The software will take care of that. So I'll give to assign to selected beams. So I've given the load here. So if you press shift plus V, so when you press the shift plus V key, you will be able to see the magnitude of the load. Shift plus V as in victory. So the exact given load is reflecting here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the live load. So live load, we have a separate load case here. We have a separate load case here for live load. So I'll go and click on that. So how am I going to give the live load? So we clearly saw that the live load given in that code book was kilonewton per meter square, which is nothing but floor load. So if you go to floor load, it is going to act like a pressure. So only when you give it like a pressure load, you can exactly define the load that was given in the code book. So it is going to be spread out throughout the room, the live load. So I am not aware of how many people are staying in the room in which you're sitting right now. So I'm going to design it sitting from here. I'm going to design that particular room based on the IS 875 code book. So if you're going to legally approve your design, so you have to follow the code book. So I'll give -2 here. So the one which I saw in the code book. So -2 kilonewton per meter square. And I have to define the height of the load where it is being exerted. So I should know the height of this particular slab. So obviously the live load is going to act on the floor. So I should see where this floor has been placed. So if you see the height of the floor, so it's like 4 meter height. So minimum is 0 and maximum is 4. That is the Y range. Okay. So I'm going to give add here. So if you just select it, now you can see that 2 kilonewton per meter square, which I gave from the code book, has been exerted on this particular structure. But when you go and give shift plus V, the magnitude of the load would have changed. Now forget about the magnitude of the load which we gave in the first place, that is minus 3.5 kilonewton. Now what we are going to witness is not that load. What we are going to witness by pressing shift plus V is this particular load. The magnitude would have changed by now. So if you see here, when I press shift plus V, I gave 2 kilonewton per meter square, but when it is acting on the beam, it has changed to 5 kilonewton per meter. So what happens is, though I gave it as a pressure load, that is 2 kilonewton per meter square, but when it is being transferred to the beams, it gets itself converted to a UDL. That is minus 5 kilonewton per meter. Okay. Now, so since we are done with this, so now it's quite easier for me to analyze and design it. So as a design engineer, it is the only place where a company or an organization will miss a design engineer is the place where they calculate the actual loads that are going to be exerted on the structure. So this knowledge can be precisely given by only a structural engineer, not an other stream, cross-stream engineers or someone. So only a structural engineer, because analyzing and design, even a mechanical engineer knows how to study the analysis and design, because even he would have studied the same subject that we studied in our syllabus. They would have studied strength of materials and all that. But designing the load and all that by seeing the code book, definitely only a structural engineer, expertise structural engineer can do that. Okay, so that is the place where world will miss us. Okay, so now I'm done with all these loads and definitions and everything. Now my next thing is, I'm going to see how the structure is going to respond for that. That is the only reason why we study papers like structural analysis 1 and 2 and all that. So we give the load and we are going to study theoretically how that particular structure is going to respond to the applied load. So we'll see now. So before going to the analysis, I'm going to show you where interactive design would be. So it is actually located here. So those of you who would have studied StatPro would have never touched any tools over here. So you have something called concrete design here, but if you click on that, you will never be able to access the tool. The reason is this will be accessible only after you design it. Okay. So you can also find it in the mode tab. In the mode tab, you have something called concrete design. In the mode tab, you have something called concrete design. So if you see that, it will not be accessible. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to analyze it. So what I'll do, I'll go to commands, and then commands I have analysis, perform analysis. I'll give all, okay, and then I'm going to analyze it. So you can get warnings in StatPro, but you should never get an error. I hope I'll not get an error. Yep, no error and no warnings. So I have to see the output file. So if you click that output file, all the theoretical information will be given in this. So in which node, in which particular node maximum displacement is happening because of the loads applied. So a structure can be made only with the help of nodes and members. So we initially created nodes as well. So if I press shift plus K, you can see that some nodes are there, dark color points. So these are the nodes or connection points, and displacement generally happens in that particular point. So you have which particular node is having a maximum displacement and that too in which direction. All that will be given in this theoretical report. So if you're using a StatPro tool for your project, don't worry, at least some 20-30 pages will be supported for your project manual. Some 20 to 30 pages will be supported by StatPro. So you need not sit and type and all that. So you can just take a printout of this report and you can attach it with your project manual. So now this is the theoretical report. So now if I want to see the pictorial result, I'll just double click on that beam. Before analysis, these two tabs will not be there. So after analysis, you have the shear bending diagram, and then you have the deflection diagram and all that. So those who have found structural papers and design papers tough, you would be surprised how easier it is for you to generate the bending moment and deflection diagram, which would be breaking your head for calculating when you're manually doing it. Okay. So this is the deflection for the columns and all that. So till here, I think everybody knows, and some might be knowing even how to design the norm in a normal way. So that's what we are going to do now. So as per the workflow, I gave the property, I gave the support, I gave the loads and definitions, materials by default given when I'm giving the property. So don't worry about it. And after general, we even went on with the analysis as well. So analysis also done. So if you go by the workflow, after analysis, the next thing which you have here is design. So this is the normal design. I think 100% of the people would be knowing how to do this. So this normal design, you will click on this, and then if you click on the design tab, you will see that you have steel design, you have concrete, you have timber, aluminum, and shear wall. So now this structure is made of concrete, so there's no point in activating steel here. So I'll go to concrete here. So the reason why there are so many codes given, ACA is American Concrete Institute, and you have so many British standards, Canadian standards, all these are given here, Mexican standards, everything, all the country codes will be given here. And as long as you're in your college, you'll be wondering, why would I go and study all these codes and all? I am familiar with IS 456 or IS 13920. So I'll go with that. I'll not even go and touch any other codes. So, but I'll tell you what is the importance of other codes here. These knowing or getting familiarized with these codes will only get you a job, not just knowing IS 456, and that too not the way we know it. So we generally, the first benchers would have by now by-hearted the code book. Middle benchers, they would have by-hearted the code book only, which is essential for the syllabus. And the last benchers, they know code book only to find the 2-mark question answers during the exams when they don't know the answers. So that's not the right way to digest a code book. So you have to be thorough with most of the codes here, at least if not all the country codes. You should be familiar with American codes, and you should be familiar with the BS. BS will be almost similar to Indian codes. Actually, Indian codes, it's almost similar to BS. It was somewhat taken from there. So I'll go with IS 456 as of now, things which you already know. So now, if you're very good in design topic, you can go and define the parameters by yourself. So defining the parameters is nothing but you have certain set of parameters for designing a structure, like clear depth, clear cover, depth, what is the yield strength of the steel used for main rod, what is the yield strength of steel used for secondary reinforcement. If don't get scared with the numbers, it's nothing but 415, which we use generally. We have this FE 415, FE 500, FE 250 steel, right? So that is what is given here. So all this you can define it yourself. So if you're not familiar with these topics, not to worry. You have select parameters here, in which software itself by default give its values. Like it will choose what kind of a grade and all that. So now what we are saying is not interactive design. What we are saying now is a normal design, which most of you know. Okay, so I'll go with select parameters. I've selected it, and after I select it, I have to define the commands here. So I have to give a command saying that, come on, with the parameters that I've given, go ahead and design the beam. So I'll add that command. And next up, come on with the parameters I've given, go and design the columns. Done. And then you have something called takeoff here. Takeoff is nothing but the calculation of the estimation, BOQ, bill of quantity. Okay, so most of you would be wondering, is STAAD capable of calculating the estimation? Yeah, STAAD is capable of calculating the estimation. And if I have to tell that in terms of building information modeling, yes, STAAD is capable of working in 3D and as well as 5D. 5D is fifth dimension, is nothing but quantity takeoff or estimation. So when it says takeoff, it means that for modeling or for constructing this set of 4 columns and 4 beams, we are going to calculate how much amount of concrete and how much amount of volume of steel is going to be utilized. So I'll go and give the takeoff command as well. So now if you see in the drop down here, the commands which I gave will be reflected here. But these 2 commands is having a question mark, because you can't generally give a command just like that. So I have to select this command and I have to assign it. I have to help it out in identifying which are the beams and which are the columns. So, some software is intelligent, but somewhere it also needs the help of human beings. So what we'll do is I'm going to select the beams here. Okay, like this. And then I'll go with assign to selected members, and then I'll assign it. Done. And then the column here. I'll select the columns. And then I'll give assign to selected column, the beam. So now once you get this green tick, which means that this model has been updated with the design criteria as well. Before, when I analyzed it, it was having only the load details with which we were able to generate the bending moment and deflection diagrams and all that. Now I have updated the model by giving the design data as well, like what kind of steel has to be used, what is the grade of concrete that needs to be used, what is the clear cover. And if you're wondering where I gave all that, this is the place where I gave all that when I selected select parameters. Okay, so now again I'm going to go and design it. This time you need not go to commands and give all these things, just go straight away, go to analyze, and then just run the analysis just like that. So now, before, when you open this output file, what you had was just the total load reaction to, that's it. Now you have a new thing called concrete design. So if you want to manually, theoretically see what design has been carried out, you can see here. So you can see for each and every single beam, the beam has been divided into 5 sections here. So that is, if the beam is 5 meter long, it has been divided into 0 to 1250 meter has been, that is 1.25 meter has been divided as one section, and from 1.25 to 2.5 meter has been divided to another section. From 2.5 to 3.75 has been divided to another section. So in this way, they have divided this into 5 sections. And in the first section, top reinforcement is there, and in the midspan, you don't have top reinforcement. You just have bottom reinforcement, and in the end, you have top reinforcement. So which means that this beam is nothing but a doubly reinforced beam. So generally in manual practices, in conventional practices, what they do is they are lazy to bend the rod. So let's say this is a beam here. And there's one, imagine instead of this 184, you have a line which represents the reinforcement. So here I have to give, this is the area of steel. I have to give 184.34 square mm area of steel here. And then I can bend it like this through an angle. I can just give it like this. And then I can bend it again like this. In this way, it is economical because in the midspan, there is no top reinforcement at all. But in conventional practice, what they do is they give reinforcement on the top as well as on the bottom. That is how they do it. Okay. So now here you can see the same quantity of steel has been given. Like we need 3 12 mm bars. Okay. One layer of 12 mm bars. And then here we need 2 layers, 2 12 mm rods and all that. And then you have the link spacing here. So it's too late.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just have this doubt. Why is the top and bottom reinforcement the same, sir? 312 on the top and 312 on the bottom.
It is same because if you just calculate the AST of this, it will match the AST of this thing. If you this here, if you calculate the small AST, and if you compare it with this, you will get these two ASTs will match actually. So here in this part, when you're doing the manual calculation, you will be doing that capital AST divided by small AST in order to find the spacing and all that. Okay. So the spacing should be in such a way that when you're pouring in the concrete, it has to have some space for the concrete to penetrate. So these are some of the hidden criterias while you're choosing the dia of the bar. So based on that criteria only, we'll be choosing this thing. You got that?
Yes, but my doubt is it really necessary that we'll have to provide 312 at top for a simply supported beam?
Okay, so the 3 12 mm bars have to be provided. That's what the tool is saying. So if you want to reiterate this design, if you want to do it much more economical way, that is why we'll be seeing interactive design after this. After finishing discussing this, I'll show you the interactive design. There you can even try it out with 2 12 mm bars also. But when you're trying 2 12 mm bars and if it is not going to support the structure, in interactive design it will straight away tell that the structure is failing. Here it will not tell you like that. Okay, because here we left that role to the software. But whereas in interactive design, we'll be the one who is going to decide what dia of rod has to be used and all that. Okay, so we just hang on to it. We'll see it in the next.
Yes, sir.
Okay, here they have given a shear reinforcement. We call that as links for beams and we call that as stirrups for columns. So all this theoretical output is given here. So if you want to see the pictorial output, you can just double click on the beams. Now you have something called concrete design. So here you can see how it has been placed and all that spacing and everything will be given. So the challenge here, why I would personally suggest that compared to the normal design, interactive design will be much more helpful for us when it comes to execution in the site is. Now imagine some 15 years experienced person is designing the structure. Okay. Now he has put his heart and soul and he has designed the structure. Okay. And he has derived all this outputs and everything. Now, who's the one who's going to perform that? Who's the person who's going to make sure that design is going to come out in the site? Who's that person? It's definitely not going to be the site engineer. If you think that the site engineer who's going to make sure that the design is being executed in the site, then you're wrong, because site engineer will be either a fresher or he'll not be totally aware of what is there in that design sometimes. But the skilled labor over there, the people who tie that centering and all that, the reinforcement and all that. Those people are the ones who make sure that the design given by the design engineer comes out in the site. Okay. So what happens is this particular design, which has been calculated by an experienced design engineer will be taken as an output, and that will be transferred to the site in the form of drawings. So as long as whatever design you have done, if you're going to present it as a drawing in this way, definitely it is not going to be understandable for the skilled labor who's there in the site. So actually, he has a certain way of understanding the drawing. So that drawing has to be first generated in AutoCAD. So only if the drawing is in AutoCAD with proper dimensioning and proper scale and proper annotation, proper text, that is when he'll be able to understand what kind of a spacing has to be given while tying the rods and all that. When the centering and shuttering process is happening in the structure, when the framework is being erected, only when he has a proper drawing, that is when he'll be able to accurately transfer the design to the site. So if you mess it up over there, obviously all the hard work that you have done for designing the structure will go as go wasted. Okay, so the design engineer will definitely inspect the site before the concrete is being laid. Once the rods are being tied, he'll definitely inspect the site and he'll quality check in certain places. Okay, so for that purpose, this normal design will never be helpful. Only interactive working. I wasn't able to select this particular tool here, but now if you go and see, that tool will be easily accessible. So that tool was hidden before. Now after the analysis is done, the config design has been activated. So the moment I click on this interactive design, you are transferred to a new window here. Okay, you're completely transferred to a new window. I think the class will go for another 20 minutes. Is it okay if it goes beyond 8 o'clock? Arun Kumar sir, is it okay if I go take another 10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Not a problem, right?
It's not a problem, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So the moment I click interactive design, I get a new window like this. Okay. So here you have something called envelopes. So in this envelopes, so just like the way we went with the flow over there, right? According to the tabs we went, in the same way we are going to go here. So don't go with the flow. You have job info, which is having all that blah blah information, client, job, date, and everything. And then you have the envelopes. So envelopes is the place where you're going to decide what are the loads that are going to be acting upon this particular structure. So now here you can filter all the loads. So definitely a structure will have live load, dead load, wind load, seismic load. If it is going to be an some conveyor or something, you have some moving load. If it is going to be an flyover or a metro track, it's going to have moving load. So there will be different types of loads, and as the structure gets complicated, it is the responsibility of that experienced design engineer to try out various combinations of the loads and see how the structure is responding. Now, what we are saying is very, very basic. But once the structure gets complicated, the experienced design engineer, he'll go with different combinations of loads actually. So that is why you have so many envelopes here. You're wondering why these many envelopes are given when there is only 2 loads acting on it. So I just name the envelope something, 1, 2, 3 or something like that. And at the moment I click on that 1, 2, 3, it will open a window where we can select the loads that need to be added into that envelope. Now, right now there's no loads highlighted here because here we have checked in show combinations only. There in that particular model, when I defined the loads, I didn't give any sort of combinations there. Okay, combinations nothing but in your manual calculation you do something called as ultimate load, where you sum up all the loads, you multiply the factor of safety, and then you calculate that as ultimate load, right? That is what is called as combinations here. I didn't give any combinations there, so I'll just uncheck it. So now we have that live load and dead load. So I can just bring both of them this side. So I'll click on OK. Now this envelope consists of the live load and dead load that I created over there. Okay. Till here, till this point, I never used any formula or I never used anything. So I'm just going with the flow as per the software. Next thing what I'll do is I'll have to define the members. I'll have to define which are the column members and which are the beam members. So only when I define it, I'll be able to see that over here. So I'm going to define it. So here, I'll first select the columns like this. So I selected the columns like this. I'll go on top. You have members. So I'll have auto form members. So M1, M2, M3, M4. It may sound scary like mathematics 1, 2, and 3, 4, but it's not that. It's just the naming of the numbers M1, M2, M3, and M4. Okay. So that has, now remember that numbers 1 to 4 are nothing but columns. And then for beams, I'm going to select these 4. I'll press Control and select these 4 members. Go to members, click on Autoform members. Now we clearly know that 5 to 8 it is. From 5 to 8 it is. We have what is that called, beams here. So I've defined the members. I created the envelope. I created the members. So next thing is you have something called groups and briefs, which is very, very important and a bit interesting as well. So the moment I click on groups and briefs here, you will get 2 windows here. One is for design groups. Another one is for design briefs. Okay, you have design groups and then you have design briefs. So here, briefs is nothing but just like a briefcase. If you see some technicians and tools and technicians, what they'll have is they'll have a toolbox. So the moment you open the toolbox, you'll have different types of tools in it, like a drilling machine. You have the hammer, you have the different burrs for making the drill. So all this will be arranged properly in that briefcase. And the moment you open the briefcase, depending upon the need, you can go and choose the right tool. In the same way here, for designing these beams and columns, I am going to create separate briefs here. So I'll go and click on brief, new brief. So first one I'll name as beam design. So this brief which I'm named here, I'm going to use it for design the beams alone. And the code which I'm going to use is IS456. Design type, beam or column. So definitely you know that it is beam. So that brief has been created. So the moment that beam has been created, what happens next is you have general information where you can, it's your responsibility to decide what is the cover space for that particular beam. So the person, the girl who asked me the doubt, I didn't notice your name. So you can see here, this is where you define all that criteria. So you are responsible for defining the criteria here. It's not the software. So I'm giving 25, 25, 25 as the cover space, both sides, bottoms, and top. And minimum reinforcement spacing. So I'm giving it as 40 mm, which means that the reinforcement spacing will not happen below 40 mm. Okay, it will be either 40 mm or above 40 mm. Okay, and the grade of concrete given here is M20, M25, M30, 35, 40. But right now, in India, the last grade of concrete that was used in Bombay Towers or India Towers, there was a building constructed by a company called Eversanda in Mumbai. I think they have, right now, the court has given a stay order for that particular building. In that particular building, the grade of concrete used was some M80 or M85. I'm not sure. It's been almost 5 years. I forgot the grade of concrete. So if you have a grade of concrete that is not given here, you can go and click on this user FCK and you can define the FCK value here. You can give the FCK value here. So I'm dividing it into 12 segments. I'll show you what these segments mean. And then the envelope here is 1, 2, 3. And then now I'm going to give the reinforcement details. So here I'll give M25. So I'm giving reinforcement details here. So in this reinforcement details, what I'm going to define is I'm going to define minimum bar criteria as 8 mm. So which means that when the software is going to choose the reinforcement, it's not going to choose the reinforcement whose diameter is less than 8 mm. And the maximum is 40 mm. It's not going to go beyond 40 mm dia. The same condition for bottom bar as well. The same way, grade of steel, Fe4 and 5, Fe250, Fe500. So we commonly use Fe500 or Fe4 and 5. And then shear reinforcement. Okay, so we'll give the number of legs that are going to be used. So I'll give Fe4 and 5 here as well. So I'll click on OK here. Okay, so the brief for designing the beams has been created. And then the next new brief will be given here. And this is for column design. Column design, IS456. And then I'll choose it as column. So here, it is the same user interface. Whatever we did for beams, the same thing we'll be doing here. Same thing without even changing one single step. But the thing is, everything will be in a misplaced form. What was there in for beam, the grade of concrete was given here. For this, it is given here. That's all. That is the only difference. Okay. Other than that, another step needs to be added for columns, where you have the member load cases. You have to make sure what are the load cases that are going to act on the columns. For beams, we didn't do this step. For columns, you have to definitely do this step. So only if you do this step, you will be able to perform the design process. Okay. So I've given the load case 1 and load case 2 here. Click on OK now. Okay. So I have created two teams here, two briefs here. Now I have to create two teams. So let's say this is CSK and this is Mumbai. Okay. So let's say these are batsmen and these are bowlers from both the teams. Okay. And now I'm going to create two teams here. So one, let's say, this is for Beam Group. So it's like CSK. And another team is Column Group. That's Mumbai Indians. Okay. So now this is for column design. Okay. What I've done is I've respective players I've put it in that particular team. Okay. For Beam Group I've added the brief as Beam Design, and for Column Group I've added the brief as Column Design. Yeah. Now here comes the main part. Now the team is ready. Okay, the team is ready with its own set of criteria. Now I have to add the right players into that particular team. So now for this Beam Group, I have to add the beams alone, and for the Column Group, I have to add the columns alone. So what I'll do, I'll select the beams like this. Better use the physical member cursor because that is why we have separately created the members. Right click on it. You have something called Add Members to Design Group. Select the right group from the drop down here. Click on Add and then click on OK. Now the columns, select the right members, right click. So if it is a complicated structure, then this process will take some time because there's another method for it. But anyways, since we'll stick on to this structure, we'll not jump into that. So you have columns, click on add, click on OK. If it is a complicated structure like which has 150 columns and 200 beams and all that, then the total ball game is different. Okay. Now I have added to the columns design group. So now we have performed all the process that is given in this workflow. Now what I'll do, I'll go to concrete member. The next process tab, concrete member. So now you see that you have the drop down for different groups. If it is beams, you can see that all the beams have been failed now. The reason why it is showing as failed is because I haven't designed it yet. So that is the reason it has failed. Both hogging, sagging, everything has failed. So what I'll do, I'm going to design now. So if I have to design, I should have performed the previous step of adding all the members to the respective design groups. So now I'll go and click on design here. So it says 5, 6, 7, 8 fall under the beam design category. So I'll just click on design. So this step answers your question, Mark, the one who asked me that doubt, right? So now if you try something more economical, let's say you're not that happy in giving 3 12mm rods. If you reduce it to 2 12mm rods, and if the design is okay, then fine, you'll get okay here. If it is not okay, you'll get it as failed here. So when it fails, you should either increase the reinforcement value or you have to increase the grade of the concrete. That is how you rectify the design. If it is failing because of tension, definitely you'll have to increase the reinforcement. If it is failing because of compression, then you'll have to reconsider what kind of grade of concrete you have to use. So now it says okay. And in the same way, I'm going to design the columns now. So columns, I'll go to design. I'll click on design here. So if everything pops out as okay, then it's fine. Now, once the design part is done, I'll go to main layout here. So this is what the interactive design is saying for columns actually. So you can see the bending moment, deflection and all that here. Okay. Now this is the columns thing. Now we'll go with the beam first. Okay. So if you click on this main layout, you can see that the rods placement. So now here you can see pictorially how the reinforcement distribution has happened. So top to one section, only the top reinforcement is there, and bottom is there throughout the beam. Generally, not in all the beams they give top reinforcement. Only when both compression and tension is acting on that particular beam, that is when you use a doubly reinforced beam. Okay, that is when we go with the top reinforcement. If there is no tension acting in that particular beam, there's no requirement for you to give. If there is no tension acting on the top surface of the beam, there's no need for you to give what is it called, top reinforcement. Just okay. Moving this section cursor, you can see that the moment I place the section cursor here right now you have plus symbol. Plus symbol indicates that there is reinforcement, but it is not right now in this particular section. So if you just move the section to this particular point, you can see that the plus symbols have turned into a dark dot, which represents the reinforcement. So if you want the theoretical tabulation of that, you can see that given here. So the reason why we have 4 rods is because instead of 12 mm rods, it's using 8 mm rods. That's the reason why we have 4 8 mm rods. Clear? So if I had not gone with 8 mm rods, generally we don't use 8 mm rods for distribution for beams and all. 8 mm rods, we in actual practice we use it only for shear reinforcement only. Okay. So if it is like a main reinforcement or secondary reinforcement, the minimum size of the rod is 10 or 12. Okay. So now, so it doesn't mean that it's failing. So rather than giving 4 8 mm rods, we can go with 2 or 3 12 mm rods. That is sufficient. Okay. Shear reinforcement details will be given here. And then we have the best part of interactive design is this one, that is schedule. So this is the place where it beats the normal design. Okay, here you can easily transfer the design output into an AutoCAD format. So that is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to transfer the same reinforcement drawing into AutoCAD. So what I'll do, I'll click on OK. For this beam alone, I'm saying. Okay, so now I'm going to place it on desktop here. So I'm going to save this on the desktop. Okay, so I'll click on save now. So now what happens? It gets saved in the desktop. So if I'm minimizing everything, so the drawing has been saved here. So let's see how it has come in AutoCAD. I'll open it in AutoCAD now. So what happens is, actually clearly remember this process which I'm doing right now. The design engineer has designed the structure, and there should be someone who understands the design created by the design engineer, and that person is responsible for sharing that design knowledge to the site by means of a drawing. So this is where, as a fresher, you will be playing that role. Okay, this is the job you will be getting as a fresher, not the job as a design engineer. Clearly understand this. If you're dreaming to become a design engineer, first you have to do this particular job. So you will be coordinating with your superior, that is that experienced design engineer. He will be the one responsible for calculating all the loads and everything. He'll even perform all the designs and everything. And as a fresher, your job is to understand that design given by that person, because you have studied all the theoretical subjects, right, related to design. So you'll understand the design easily. So once you understand the design, you will convert that into drawing, and it's your responsibility to do the detailing part in the drawing in such a way that the skilled labor who is just qualified with +2 or 10 standard, he should understand that particular drawing. In that way, you have to detail that particular drawing. Now the drawing is not visible. So if something is not visible in AutoCAD, the command for that is zoom all. So Z, enter, A, enter. So the moment you give that command, you can see that the drawing has been converted. So now what happens is, whether you bring a drawing from Tekla or you bring a drawing from STAAD, this is how it comes. It will be a raw drawing. So you can't send this to a skilled labor because you'll not understand anything in this. Okay. So it's your responsibility as a fresher to delete all these annotations. You will delete everything, and you will again annotate it in a very detailed way. And this specifications, this criteria in the way which it has to be annotated will be given by the client to you. So you need not break your head for that. So all that rules and regulations will be given to you. What kind of a font has to be used, what color has to be used. This particular job is called as rebar detailer or structural detailer job. So as a fresher, you can be an MTech graduate or you can be an BTech graduate or anything. So as a fresher, this is the job you'll be doing for first 3-4 years. So once you're experienced with this particular job for 3 years, by then you would have at least dealt with 4 or 5 projects, huge projects, and then you'll be promoted as a modeler, structural modeler. So modeler's job is to model the structure, the thing which we did in the first place. Okay. So the design engineer will give you all the load details. You will have to model everything. That you will be doing for another 3-4 years. So totally your experience will become 7 years. So only after that 7 years of experience as a detailer and a modeler, you will be eligible to become a design engineer. So if you become a design engineer, then you can work as a consultant as well to many companies where you can see a lot of cash. Okay. So that is the reason when you're trying to apply for the job of a design engineer, they will be asking 7 years minimum experience. So when they say 7 years minimum experience, you'll be wondering, what am I doing with my MTech degree and BTech degree when everybody is asking for experience? So this is what that 7 years experience is all about. And in this same model, I'm going to show you what FEA is all about. So I'm not going to take much of your time. It's hardly going to take me five minutes or something. So in simple words, FEA is nothing but if those people who have a laptop in front of you, consider that keyboard as the slab, okay? Consider the keyboard in front of you as the slab that we're going to analyze now using FEA, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the difference between finite element analysis and the normal analysis now, okay? So now I'm just going to draft, I'm just going to update this model with a plate here. Plate is nothing but the slab. So I'll just draw a 4-noded plate like this. Okay. And for that particular plate, I'm going to just give a thickness. So the thickness is going to be 0.25. Let's say for an example, I'm just giving a random data here. So don't ask me why I'm giving 0.25 data. So 0.25, I have given the plate thickness. I'll assign it to the view. Okay. So now this particular plate is going to experience a certain amount of load. Okay. So in the loads and definitions, what I'll do is in the live load section, I'll give plate load here. It's going to be a pressure on full plate. So -2, the one which we saw on the code book. I'll go with global Y direction, add. So this particular load is going to act throughout the plate here, assigned to plate. So now I'm going to analyze the structure again. Okay, I'm going to analyze the structure again with the updated plate here. So the moment I analyze it, see what happens. So here I'm going to clearly tell you the difference of with FEA and a normal analysis. Okay. So now I've analyzed it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see the stress distribution on this particular plate here. So how can I see that? Right click, you have structure diagrams. When you right click, you have structure diagrams. You have something called plate stress contour. So I'm going to see in which particular point of this particular plate maximum stress is acting. Okay, if you're wondering why I have to see all these things, where it is going to be used, I'll tell it in the end of the session. Okay, now what I'm going to see is I'm going to see where maximum stress is acting on this particular plate for me. Okay, so just go and click on maximum absolute. So if you see here, the minimum is also the same value and the maximum is also the same value. So if I just click on apply now, what happens is the whole slab will look reddish in color. And if you see the stress distribution here, you can see everything is the same value. So it makes no sense if it is going to show like this, right? So now, whatever you're seeing on the screen, compare it with the keyboard of your laptop, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is, this particular report that you're seeing is, you will get this kind of a report when you ignore all the keys on your keyboard. So if you're ignoring all the keys on your keyboard, and if you consider the slab without the keys on it, this is how the result will be. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mesh this particular slab here. So I'm going to select the slab and I'm going to mesh it. I'm going to mesh it. So meshing is nothing but, see your keyboard, each key is a mesh on it. Each key is there right on your keyboard. 1, 2, 3, A, S, T, ABCDs. All these keys are nothing but a mesh. Okay. Now the same keyboard, I'm going to consider it as a slab along with the keys in it. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm going to convert this into a mesh. Okay. I'm converting it into a quadrilateral mesh. So it has 10 divisions, and what is the spacing, everything I'm giving it here. Okay. I'll apply it. So now it certainly looks like your keyboard, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to analyze it again with the same set of loads. I'm not going to update the loads here. I'm going to analyze it using the same set of loads. So the moment I analyze it, ignore the warnings. You shouldn't have the errors. You can have the warnings here. Okay. Now what happens, you see, now I can clearly guess that the maximum load will either be in this particular point because the span of the beam is too high because it's 5 meters, I guess. So either it will be here, or sometimes if the distance between slabs, the overall area of the slab is too high, then the stress maximum will be in this particular portion. If you're doing FEA for a water tank and all that, the retaining slab will have the maximum stress, especially in this particular portion. Okay, now let's just see where the stress distribution is. I'll go to structural diagrams here. Okay, you have plate stress contour. Now I'll go to the maximum absolute. Now you can see that the least value of stress distribution is 0.19 and the maximum is 0.7. It just looks like the run rate table of our IPL thing. So I'll just click on apply and click on OK. So as I guessed, now you can see that the maximum stress distribution is in this particular portion. Now it will look very fancy. You'll be wondering, oh, okay, these colors and all are not very nice, and the spectrum is very good. So what am I going to take away from this? What is the conclusion I am deriving from this? For this kind of a building, there's no need for you to go with FEA. For conventional buildings like commercial buildings or residential buildings and all, nobody will be using an FEA unless and until you are using a new kind of a profile. When I'm saying profile, if your building is going to be constructed using steel structures and you are using an I section or a channel section which has not been proposed in steel table, you have fabricated that on your own. In that case, you can analyze that with FEA project. So this is the project we worked in. It happened in 2017. We worked in this project. So this is how an input file will look like. It will be almost familiar with the project manual which you prepare in your college. So it is totally of 272 pages. It will consist of the GA drawings and all that. GA drawings will be the first thing given in this input. In that GA drawings, this is actually a steel design. Since we just had 1 hour, I couldn't tell you interactive steel design. All we saw was interactive concrete design. Interactive steel design will be a little bit different and will be much more interesting. Maybe if I get an opportunity to address you again, I'll definitely tell that to you as well. Okay. So if you just go through this input file, our first job is to go through this input file, and it is pretty much clear that it is an output of StatPro. And if you go with the GA drawings and all that, I'll just scroll down a bit. So this is how the drawings will look like. So what does this have? This particular report have? It has all the connection details. 3.1.10.1 is the connection given in this UNP. Now, you'll be wondering, what is this UNP 200? What is this HEA 200 and all that? Now, if you're going to work in Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel statue in India, then in that project, if you're working, then it is good that you know IS 800 and IS 456. But all this UNP 200, HEA 240, these kind of steel profiles, you'll not find it in Indian standards. These are all UK standards, United Kingdom standards. Now, all the structural companies in India don't do projects only from India. Okay, understand that first. They procure projects from other countries as well. They do Australian projects, New Zealand projects, Singapore projects and all that.